Sewists! I am Ashley of Sewists, finally here for another tutorial. Ages since I've done the last one, sorry. But I think a lot of you will agree that it is worth the wait because we are making a Tardis bag. Ooh. Features a turn lock opening. I am using an antique silver chain and strap connector purchased from K&A, Custom Fabrics and Hardware, and that is also where you can get these panels if you want to make your own Tardis bag. The panels themselves are the sewing pattern, so there's no PDF sewing pattern. When you purchase it, you will get the exterior and interior lining pieces, but any additional hardware like the strap connectors or chain, those are additional and extra cost. But they're very cool, so I do recommend checking them out. There are many different ways you can customize this bag. That's probably my favorite thing about it. I don't really like to feel like I do mass-produced stuff, so I tend to change every bag that I do. There's no pockets inside this one. There can be some in the future, but it really is designed to be just kind of a bucket purse, a catch-all for all of our, quick shopping excursions. So it turned out really cute. I think you can agree. Woo. I'll take some really cool pictures of it and share it on my social media. So make sure you are following me at Sewists. That's S-E-W. I thought I was being clever, but now I have to spell it out every time I tell everybody my handle. So hindsight. But I got a cute Tardis purse, so I'm winning life. Let's go ahead and cut away, do some movie magic, and I'll show you how you can make this bad boy. See you soon. Okay guys, so let's talk about what your panels are going to look like when you receive them in the mail. They come rolled up like so. You will unroll them. Your lining is rolled up on the inside. And as I've mentioned before, the panel pieces are your actual pattern pieces. So your seam allowance is actually built into the image design. So you will just cut out all along the image for all your pattern and purse pieces. Now, you are going to want to measure them to make sure that they are accurate. Occasionally, sometimes fabric shifts on the printing machine. Your larger panel pieces should be 9 by 6 inches long, and your square pieces should be 6 by 6. And for every exterior piece, you will have a mirrored interior piece that measures the same exact way. So I'm going to cut this out and see you in a second, and we'll talk interfacing. Okay, so we are back with some cut pattern pieces. I like to cut my lining just a little bit bigger so I can press it and then fuse on my woven interfacing. And for this bag, I am using just Fuse Plus, which I have gotten from Castine Handcrafted. I can link that in the description below. This is a very structured bag, so I think the Plus adds just a little bit more stiffness to the lining, which, goes a long way. Really, you can use any type of woven interfacing, SF 101, regular Fuse Plus like I'm using, but you are definitely going to want to interface your woven lining, all right? For your bottom and top flat pieces, you will notice it's a little hard to see probably on the camera, but there is a slight design on 2 pieces. That's going to be the top of your Tardis, and then there is a third vinyl exterior piece that is the bottom of your Tardis. I am using Decovil Heavy to interface. I have cut it 1 inch shorter, so I cut this 5 by 5. I will be fusing this onto the bottom with a little strip of Fuse to go over it to hold it in place. All right, and I will be doing that to all 3 of these pieces. Now, this is, like I said, a very structured bag, and interfacing is really going to be the star of how we put this bag together. I'm actually going to interface kind of light, and I'm also going to interface in a way that I haven't interfaced this bag before, so none of my test bags I've tested this way, because I think it'll be really fun to try something new, and hopefully I won't have to film a new video showing you a new Tardis bag. But honestly, I don't really have any concerns. Most of the structure of this bag comes after we've sewn it all together. There's a step at the end where we add more structure to the bag. So really, all I'm going to interface these panels with is just Decovil light. Cut an inch short, all sides, so 8 by 5 inches all the way around. That way I'm not sewing into my seam allowance. You will notice on these panels, I did leave just a little sliver of white on the sides. Like I said, I will be sewing at a 3/8 seam allowance, and that seam allowance is built into the design, but I'm kind of a fast sewist, and I don't always pay attention. Sometimes I zoom, and leaving a little extra border like that just really kind of leaves an extra, margin for error, and guarantees that my image will be, showcased fully. Now up here, you'll notice I have left it even longer. That is because, let me see if I can reach my ruler real quick. Excellent. As I've said, your 3/8 seam allowance is built in, but that police box is really close to the top, and we are going to be top stitching the bag pretty much where that black line is. So I'm going to actually add like maybe a 1/4 of an inch, or even maybe even just the 3/8 inch to the top, so I can just have a little bit of extra room and space for the design for top stitching. So not necessarily required, but definitely recommended if you want to, have some room for error to catch that police box sign. And I think one of my test bags I actually top stitched twice, so I did like the top lip around, and then I did the bottom of the foam box sign, and I really like that look, so I'm going to do that again this time. So like I said, a little extra space, never a bad thing. Awesome. So here are all our parts. Here's all the interfacing. And then, as I mentioned, there is a step that we will be taking pretty much once the bag is all assembled to really give it that structured look. I'm not even going to mention what we're using until we get to that step, because I don't want to confuse you. I don't want to confuse me. And I think it's kind of a cool thing to experiment with, and maybe hopefully use it in other bags as well. So yeah, I'll go ahead and iron this all together. We'll have a quick look at it before we start piecing it together at the machine. All right, see you guys soon. All right, guys, before we get to sewing, let's talk hardware real quick. There's not a whole lot of hardware you actually need for this bag. I am using these really cool new strap connectors that K&A just got, instead of the connector tabs that come with your sew along panels. So I'm going to be trying these out. If you are going to be not using like a metal strap connector, your pattern does come with these strapped connector tabs. You can interface it with like maybe an inch of Decovil light if you want some extra support. But when you make your connector strap, all you're going to do, just like how many of us have made straps before, you are going to have a strip of Decovil light, a strip of double-sided tape, and then butt your sides in together until they fold. That will measure an inch exactly. The hardware is made, you'll need 2D ring connectors or a little triangle ring connector. And it, like I said, it measures an inch exactly. If you want to do 3/4 of an inch, just trim down your little tabs and do 3/4. This is kind of a smaller bucket bag, so I think a 3/4 inch strap would actually be very appropriate and comfortable. I am not going to be making a crossbody strap, only because K&A recently just got in this really cool antique silver purse chain in. So I think antique silver is a really cool color for the Tardis accompaniment hardware. So I'm gonna go ahead and rock that instead of making a crossbody strap. I also have my little nameplate, and this bag goes together with a turn lock, and I'm sure you can kind of guess why. It really kind of mimics the Tardis light very nicely, and there's a lot of fun turn locks you can find. I just got this one on Amazon. I know K&A carries turn locks, some that are fandom specific, so they've got some really cool fun ones for like Pokemans and such. But yeah, so go check out their hardware, see what's new. And like I said, just a basic turn lock. You can play around with different sizes, but this one is just about 1.5 inches, and I kind of like that size for this bag. All right, so now we're gonna interface, and then I'm gonna get to sewing. All right, so let's talk hardware one more time real quick, because as I mentioned before, the construction of this bag is actually very simple. There's only so many ways you can sew together a rectangle box. So the construction, I think, is really going to be the easiest part. The ways you can customize this bag and kind of elevate it beyond just the bare bones of the sew-along panels, that's going to be the real star. So not even interfacing, which I've already mentioned we're going to be doing in a special way to give it that really rigid, structured look. But an additional thing you can do to customize your bag is do a unique shape on the top of your Tardis. We give you the square panels to do just a regular square flat top with a turn lock opening, and you can seal that lock with magnets like the previous Tardis bag I showed, hopefully in the intro video, should have seen that. I used 2 18mm magnets for the close there, and I just did the regular square top. For this bag, I decided I wanted to cut in a little and give kind of a little extra shape to give a little bit more depth and dimension for the top, which I think will actually help emphasize the turn lock. So I have one of my top bag pieces. You will see there's like a little black dot right there. Hard to see, I do apologize, but that is your dead center. And my handy dandy ruler is also exactly 6 inches. So I'm a very visual person. So whatever I decide to like do something like this, kind of change a pattern piece from what it already is to kind of make it just a little bit different, I always just kind of set up where my end game is going to be. Like that is going to be the center of my bag. It is going to attach on that side. So I want to come in, keeping in mind that I will be still sewing the interior lining of the flap to this piece. I think I will take off, let's see here, because I can also do like that. I think I'm going to take off maybe about, I'm going to take off 1 3/4 inches from one end. And then I will play around with maybe a little triangle shape coming up to close it off. So I will kind of play around with that design, and then once I get the math figured out, I will let you know in case you want to try that design yourself. All right, so I did my math. I went ahead and took off 1 3/4 inches from one end, and then I came down to mark 2 inches in the center. You can see my little center marks. And then I came in from the side only 1 1/4 inches. So I will cut off these little angles. That's going to give me a nice little lip, as you can see. I'll do it right now. And then I am still going to interface this with my Decovil Heavy, cut 1/2 inch away from my edges, and then a little bit of a Sewists over it to hold the Decovil in place. All right, and so as you can see, it'll be like so. I've got a little extra built in for my seam allowance and top stitching. I'm excited to see how it looks. You could really do a whole bunch of different shapes with this top opening. I saw a lot of cool turn locks. You know, there's a lot of oval ones, so you could do like a little half circle. If you want to get fancy, you can do like a little point star. You could really play around and really make some fun customized images here. I'll go ahead and finish interfacing this piece, and then I'm going to see you back to install some hardware and talk where we're going to place our strap connectors. All right, so hardware time. I'm going to be installing, just real quick, my little logo nameplate tag. There are front and side panels, it's hard to tell, but there is just a little faint door handle. So this is actually the front of your Tardis. All your other pieces are the same except for this one. So if you are adding a nameplate or a handmade, handcrafted plate, I would recommend adding it to your front one. And I would actually recommend, you can add it wherever you want, but I am going to add it right here on the top left panel because that actually kind of mimics the police box call sign that is on front of the Tardis. So eyes will be drawn there very naturally, and it'll be kind of a nice little, you know, look at piece. So I will be adding that shortly. I will also be taking my two sides that will be having the strap connectors. So like I mentioned, I am using this new antique silver strap connector that K&A has in stock. They do not come with your sew along panels, so it is extra, so it is not something included, but they are really cool looking, and I think antique silver is a really cool color for the Tardis. I think antique gold would be really cool too. I think anything kind of aged or goldy would obviously look very good for the Tardis. I'm going to be adding them right about, you can really add them wherever you want, but I think they kind of look almost like a door knocker. So I think I'm going to come in right in between. You can see these two lines, and I will just come in right in center. I will push a little hole to screw my little knocker in. Hey-oh. I haven't done it yet, and I don't plan on doing it with this one just because of timing. But I think a really cool way to elevate this bag, like I said, there's a lot of little things you can do to kind of, you know, zhuzh it up, is to top stitch around these panels and the door maybe. So that might be something I do in the future. It might be something you might want to try. I would do at least the front door one, but I wouldn't necessarily say you need it for all four sides. So I don't know. It might be kind of cool to try that in the future. I'm going to go ahead and install my strap connectors and my nameplate, and I'll go ahead and show you how that turned out. I won't do a video of me actually doing it because it's me just poking a hole and tightening a screw. The only thing I will mention is that I always recommend using just a little dab of E6000 on any hardware that has a flat surface connecting to the vinyl of your bag. It's just, you know, I've never had anything pull off like that, but it's just a little extra security, so you might as well. And then on the back of it, if you have any hardware like prongs, washers, even the screws, which will, you know, lie nice and flat, cover it with duct tape. For the most part, your lining, you know, it's interfaced pretty well. It'll hold up, but you don't want your hardware constantly rubbing against it. That's going to be a stress point, and it's best to protect it so your bag will, you know, last forever. So I'll go ahead, do these. I'll show you the finished work, and then I promise we'll actually make it to the sewing machine in just a second. See you guys soon. Hi guys, now we're back at the machine as promised, and we're finally ready to actually sew. And as I mentioned, the construction of the bag is actually the fastest part of making the bag. The sewing is the fastest part. I have already pinned and clipped my flaps for the top of the bag. Here's that little design shape I said I'm going to do. I've got my right sides faced together. I'm going to sew down here, 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 and here, leaving this top open for turning to do my first flap. And then the flap that's going to go underneath it, I'm going to sew down 3 sides, leaving the top opening open for turning. All right, so again, this extra design is something I just kind of did to play around. I left the lining piece just square behind it. I thought it would be just kind of a good visual so you can kind of see it, how it all pieces together. I'm gonna go sew down those sides, leaving the opening to turn, and then I'll come back to you and show you what we're gonna do next. Thanks. Oh, and if I have not mentioned it, I am sewing a 3/8 allowance. I think I mentioned it during the setup. And my stitch length is at about a 4, and I'm just going to keep it at a 4 for the whole construction of this bag. I'm using all vinyl exterior, and I might hop over to my vintage Singer 2012 for the lining construction, just because, you know, it's a lighter weight material even with the interfacing, but we'll see how I feel. For now, I'll sew these down. Now, because I did this top design, I'm just kind of eyeballing what I think is 3/8. Boom, baby, nailed it. And just kind of going down to my corners. I have this really handy dandy edge roller that came with my machine from Sunny Sewing. And it's really dialed in to that 3/8. So I just kind of use it as a visual roller guide. Boop. And another side here. So I'll show you how, I'll leave the video running for when I'm doing this one, and then I'll just cut away to the other flap. Make sure you back stitch, of course, at the start and end of every stitch line. And so now you can see where I've sewn it, leaving the top open to flip it out. I will be trimming my seam allowance down since I'm gonna be top stitching this flap. And I will be cutting at an angle at the curves to really kind of use I have a little chopstick that I'll use to kind of push through the corners. I'm gonna go ahead and sew this side, and then I'll come see you for top stitching. All right, so we got those all sewn together. And as you can see, very simple little square shape there. If you feel the need to, you can iron the back of it where your cotton woven piece is. Especially since you had Decovil heavy on the flap, it might not be a bad idea if you creased it. I think mine's looking actually pretty good, so I'm not gonna worry about hitting it with an iron. I've kind of pushed my seam allowances in and finger rolled and pressed where I needed, used my handy dandy chopstick to kind of get all those corners nice and tight. And I'm really liking the look of that little extra design thing I did. So hopefully it'll still look good once the trim lock's on it. I'm gonna go ahead and start top stitching this at about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Well, I really like that these sew-along panels came with the full square top piece to kind of play around with, because it really leaves you with a lot of options for finishing and how you want to close up the bag. Like I said, I'm using a turn lock, which I think will look really cool for this, but because you have the full square pieces, you could potentially do like a zipper closure if you really wanted. I put this bag together when I was testing and designing the pattern many different ways, and the way I am showing you today is pretty much the method that I personally think, maybe not true, but I think this method will be the most efficient way to put it together for both an industrial machine like the one I am using and a domestic machine, which, you know, what most people use. That was really one of the things that we wanted to tackle with this bag, is just making it very versatile and user-friendly. So hopefully when you make this bag, you'll be very surprised by how quickly and easily it goes together, because I know I was. That's one flap done. Gonna top stitch the other flap. I'll go ahead and do that real quick, and then I'll cut away and take you back to the next step in just a second here. Hi guys, Future Ashley here, coming in to tell you that my camera actually cut out at the next step of our flap making process. You'll see in the next clip that part of our turn lock is actually installed, and that's because I installed it after top stitching our square top piece lining, and my camera stopped filming while I was doing it. But it's a very simple installation. Turn locks can install differently. Some might have Chicago screws, some like this are just prongs. So I'll talk you through what I did, and it's pretty simple enough. I know you can do it. So let's just say this square folded piece is our top stitched square flap lining. You will see a square dot, which is the exact center of your flap piece. And all I did was take my turn lock, put my prongs on either side of that dock to get dead center, make 2 slits, push it through, and then use my washer to catch the prongs. And then boom, turn lock installed, at least the male part. The other half of the turn lock we are gonna install actually later. And I'm pretty sure my camera stopped filming then, so you're gonna see future Ashley again. Tech issues happen, sorry. But like I said, very simple. I'll see you again in a sec. Let's continue making the Tardis bag. All right, so turn lock part installed, flaps are done and top stitched. I am going to set them aside for later use. Now we're gonna work on the body of the bag. This can be a little bit tricky for as you pin it together and as you sew. Make sure you have your front piece. Always know where your front piece is, and then always know where your side connector piece is, because as you pin it together, you want to make sure your strap connectors, side connectors end up on the sides. You don't want them next to each other. That would not be fun or practical. If you are not using a metal strap connector, this is the part where you would sew them together. You would take your strap connector tabs, put some double-sided tape down the center, fold and butt them in, slide your D-ring on, and then sew to your side panel like so. All right, but we've already installed our antique silver strap connectors available at K&A. Like I said, they don't come with the sew-along panels, but they are for sale in their hardware section, and they're pretty fun. I like them. I'm going to take my front panel and I'm going to line my side against it like so, as you can kind of see. And then I will pin down the left side, because then that way when you open it up, you will have your main panel in the center with a side connector strap panel on the left. Now what I like to do is get this clipped, and then I will kind of open it just to make sure the image is lined up, particularly because I added the extra white border as a little, extra seam allowance give, because I sew so quick. And now we'll just sew straight down the side. Excellent. Huzzah! Lines up lovely, lovely. If you want, you can top stitch your seam allowance open. It is not necessary because of the extra support and interfacing that we're going to be adding later on. I think I will, just because I like the look of it. But once you have all your sides, attached, it is going to make one side harder to top stitch and get to. I might attempt it on the video just to see if I can get to it. But if not, I'm all right with leaving one side not top stitched, but I will strategically put that side to the back of the purse to where it's the side that's going to be against the user's body. That's just my preference. It's up to you guys if you want to top stitch or skip it. See how you feel. I'm going to do it this time because I feel like it. So I'll top stitch this side open, and then afterwards I'm going to take my other strap connector side and I'm going to pin that to the side, so we have our middle wedged right in the middle. Go figure. Our front panel wedged right in the middle of the 2 strap connectors. All right, so I'll start sewing that and top stitching, and then I'll show you what that looks like in just a sec. Okay, so we have all our sides attached. We have 3 corners top stitched. I am not going to be a hero and try to top stitch the 4th corner. I think if you were patient, you probably could. I just don't think it's necessary, and I don't really like the idea of stretching out and trying to force it when it's not necessary, So I'm going to skip that part. and go ahead and attach the bottom. So here's the bottom of the Tardis piece, just plain blue exterior. I'm going to start, so we got our right sides in, right sides together. I always start with a corner pinning. So I'm going to pin a corner where the corner just overlaps with the seam allowance open, like so. I will start with that corner and pin, and then I will go to the opposite corner and pin. And that is a side with the seam allowance stitched open, so that'll make it nice and easy for this part. Again, not necessary, but you know, it's kind of fun and cool. I'm gonna go to the next corner and to the next corner. So in theory, you can kind of see how our seam allowances is adding up and matching very nicely. And now I can go through and pin the rest. Finding the corners is not only the easiest way to help, finding and pinning the corners first, I should say, is not only the easiest way to kind of just get you started. It's also, I mean, at least for me, the easiest way to give you as close as possible to that square shaped bottom. Sewing a square shaped bottom on a bag like this can be a little tricky. You just got to make sure you stop at these corners with your needle down and do a sharp 90-degree angle turn. So don't be quick, don't be a hero. And because I have cut the Decovil heavy almost exactly our seam allowance, I cut it to a 1/2 inch shorter, and I'm sewing at a 3/8. So it's going to make it a very nice visible guide for when I'm sewing with the bottom up for where my needle's going to go. So it actually really does help, because you'll have that corner of the Decovil heavy that you can see, and you can use that as a visual guide for when you need to stop with your needle down. So yeah, not too bad, I promise. Just about done getting this bad boy pinned. Yeah, this is really lining up nicely. Sometimes, you know, I've mentioned before, maybe not this video or maybe not on this social media platform, but I talk about a lot about how seam allowances are really forgiving. If you went through and you cut your fabric a little fast, or maybe, you know, you didn't line something up exactly right, you know, having a good seam allowance really gives you a lot of room for error to kind of make it work. So you don't have to start all over again. So there's the bottom of my Tardis pinned or clipped. You can kind of see the Decovil heavy that I will be using as a visual guide for sewing. Of course, I'll have my edge roller as well for my 3/8 seam allowance. I will be stopping at every corner with my needle down, pivoting, thank you friends, pivoting, and pivoting all the way down. So also I'll do one side with you guys, and then we'll speed through. And I am sure you can see this bag is almost already together, so it's really cool. All right, edge roller down, back stitch. It can be a bit tedious. I like to stick my hand into the opening of the purse too, so I can kind of feel, make sure my fabric is not getting bunched up. I have already taken off the clip for my corner piece. I have to take that off early because otherwise my edge roller will hit it. So that does, you know, it's a little annoying. But because the Decovil heavy's there, I have the exact corner of where I'm stopping, which I am doing now. I'm leaving my needle in the down position, stopping and pivoting my bag. Oh, actually, it looks like I can go a couple more stitches. So let's go a couple more stitches. Boop. There it is. Pivot. And then before I start sewing at the corner, I'm going to stick my hand in there, make sure it's flat. There it is. Awesome. So I'm going to do that to all sides. So I'll see you back in a sec, and I'll show you what that looks like all sewn up. All right, so we have our square bottom added, and I'm going to trim our seam allowance down so this will lie nice and flat, and then we will turn it right side out. Make sure you clip kind of generously around the corners, but you don't want to clip into your actual stitching. That would stink. Although if you accidentally do that, hey, you're still by the machine. You can go back, resew. It won't take long. It's just never fun. Almost done here. I think I do better on this one side. And the corners in particular is where you want to remove the bulk of the excess fabric. Because you know, you got your Decovil heavy, you've got the vinyl, all that fabric kind of adds up. And when you're turning it out like we're about to, you want to try to get those corners pushed out nice and neat. Let me get all this trash there. There we go. Now I did not add purse feet to the bottom of this purse because it's kind of supposed to be like a bucket purse. You know, it's supposed to be like a purse. You just put your keys, your sunglasses, your wallet in, and then go. So I didn't really add any pockets. I didn't add purse feet. The next one I might add a pocket just for funsies. It'd be very easy to add a slip pocket. You would just take, you know, maybe a spare piece of fabric or waterproof canvas, just fold it almost in half, top stitch a line, and then just kind of baste it to one of your side panels. Easy peasy. So, you know, definitely an option if you want. So here's where we start to see the fruits of our labor. Start seeing a Tardis bag start to look like a Tardis. So I'm excited, and I hope you are too. I'm rolling all that seam allowance in towards the center. You can see it's a nice square bottom. Huzzah. Almost there, almost there. So now we have to top stitch the messenger flaps to it, and then our exterior is done, and we have to start assembling the lining. I kind of prefer, I think I'm gonna have my decorative top stitch, my decorative flap on the front. That way when I open it, I am opening it out and reaching in. That's my preference, but if you want to space it differently, go for it. I'm gonna clip my flap together here. There we are. So before I base stitch this down, I'm going to show you something real quick because it is kind of important to the assembly of the bag. You don't want your top flap to extend beyond your side seams, even by a little bit. Like even if it's by a little bit, because what's gonna happen is when the bag's all done and assembled together, if your flap is pushing your sides out further than the seam, than the side seam wants to go, you're gonna have a small gape, and you don't really want a gape in your bag, where, you know, it would probably be small, but you want everything to fit nice and flush as possible. So again, make sure your flap is in between your side stitch in there. Okay, same with your back flap. Okay, and like I said, you're only going to base stitch this maybe about 1/4 of an inch to the bag. This is actually the step that prompted me to cut the flap a little bit longer at this time, because I always forget that this is a base stitch step, and I'll just be zooming through, and then I'll just find myself stitching it at 3/8, and then I got really close to the police design, the police box designs, and I was like, well, maybe I'll add a little bit in case I forget. And if I forget, my plan was to, you know, add a little voiceover in the video, for the video. So as you can see, I'm smushing this bag pretty good, but it can take it. So I have made this bag without taking my flatbed off. and I've made it on my domestic, so you can do it too. I have a narrow presser foot, so I just happen to know the width of it is pretty much 1/4 inch, so I'm just using the width of my presser foot to base stitch this down. Again, maybe about 1/4 inch from the top, not at the normal 3/8 seam allowance. I say it a lot because I don't want you to do what I did. Gave me a heart attack. Awesome. So because we use Decovil heavy on the top, you can kind of see it's going to help that side really maintain that kind of stiffness here. And then with it on the back side too, I dropped flat. With it on the back side too, it will help that stiffness along that side. And then our last step will be the interior side panels. Oof. Grab the flap, pin and make sure I am not going beyond that side seam, and I am not. Huzzah, good job. And then I will base stitch this down at about 1/4 inch. And then our exterior of our Tardis bag is assembled, and we'll go ahead and start on the lining, which is going to be even easier. So, all right, I'll base stitch this down and see you in a second. Hi guys, so we have our flaps base stitched down. Huzzah, huzzah. It looks fantastic. It's going together perfectly. Our exterior is now completely assembled, and now we are going to assemble our interior, which will go together exactly like our exterior. We're going to sew all 4 sides of our lining together and then attach our bottom. This is a directional lining. You'll see all your awesome doctors, so you're going to want to make sure that they are facing all the same way and standing up properly. And then sew your seam allowance 3/8 just like you would on your exterior. You could sew at 1/2 inch seam allowance. If you do, that actually kind of, that's actually not a bad idea, because then your lining will fit a little bit snugger inside. If you do that though, make sure you sew at 1/2 inch seam allowance in the center part, but still keep it 3/8 at the top and the bottom, because we still want it to line up with everything else that we've done, all right? Now, the only thing that's going to be different for assembling the lining is that we're going to leave one side open for a turning hole. So I like to do that side first, that way I don't forget it. So you can see I've double clipped here. I'm going to sew pretty much where my pins are, then I'm going to leave a nice big gap here open, and then finish it off. And that'll be our hole for turning it over when we do our drop-in lining. Again, 3/8 seam allowance. And I'm gonna go ahead and finish sewing this tube closed. And then I will trim down the seam allowances on this to about 1/4 inch on all my side seams once done. All right, so complete the circuit. 3/8 seam allowance. Back stitching at our starts and stops. I can see my fabric is shifting. I'm going to stop and adjust. Caught it in time. Huzzah, huzzah. I try to keep all my scissors within reach. Sorry, I'm dancing around. All right, so on the side that we leave open for our turning hole, you're going to want to leave some extra seam allowance where that hole is going to be sewn up close. So do not trim your seam allowance there. I'm going to cut kind of like at an angle. I'll show you in a mo. Like so. That'll be like a good little angle. And then I tend to leave the corners a little bit long, again, so I can feed through the bottom square for our lining. It just makes it a little bit easier if your corner, or if your top and bottom are just a little bit long still. So you can kind of wedge the corner or the square piece in, and you just have a little bit more room to kind of play and finagle it. And it will take a little bit of playing and finagling. It's not too hard, but it is a little bit harder on the cotton woven. I mean, vinyl will slip and stretch, but for the most part, you know, it'll grip against itself. Woven's obviously not as thick, and it's going to want to slip a little bit more. So it's going to be important to be patient, which is not my strong suit, as you pin this bad boy. So let me get my extra pins here. I like to use like my metal hair clip pins, like so, for quick side seams. But when I need a little bit more extra hold, like for the bottom panel here, I like to use my plastic clips. They're a little bit stronger, and they don't grip as far in, so you can kind of see what you're doing a little bit more. So again, I'm opening up my seam allowances, taking my bottom panel and just lining it a little bit to where the corner overlaps. And that's where I'm gonna clip. And do the same on all four corners until you pin, and then go in, you know, along the sides, just like we did the exterior. All right, so the bottom is all clipped. You can kind of see those corners peeking out, everything lined up perfectly. So we've been good following our seam allowance. Again, I sew at a 3/8 for this bag. If you change your seam allowance, just be consistent. Let's go ahead and get this bottom closed so we can pretty much finish up this bag. Now, one more, and we're almost back at the beginning. Cool beans. Excellent. So we've got our bottom attached. You can see inside. Ooh, very doctory. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to trim off the seam allowance from that bottom panel we just added. I recommend going diagonal at your corners to kind of get the most out of it, out of that little area, because that is an area where bulk will like to kind of bunch up. Dope. This is turning out awesome. All right, so we've got it all stitched, seamed, stitched, cut, seam allowance cut. Yeah, you know what I mean. It's all together. Let's turn it right side out. It is looking fantabulous. And then we're going to take our exterior and turn that right side in, because we're going to want these right sides together as we sew. And your lining is going to be easier to pull through if you sew it inside to your exterior, trust me. So it always stinks when you have to like flip a bag out, flip it back in, but that's part of the reason why I didn't use a whole lot of interfacing on this bag. It's that it's potentially a hard one to turn, and if you're like me and you sew a lot, you're probably developing arthritis or carpal tunnel, and you know, it's just not fun always having to turn and turn out bags, or birthing bags, that's also called. I call it both. It certainly does feel like giving birth sometimes. Alright, this one's just about done here. Now, I didn't do any pockets or anything this time, but it would be very easy to add pocket, little slip pocket. That's up to you. Because I don't really have to be careful, you know, about which side is facing which when I add this. If I had a pocket, I would probably want at least one of it to lie like on the side that rests against the user body. So I would probably have that towards the back, but for a bucket purse, I don't know, it just kind of seemed like unnecessary. Which is weird because you usually never hear girls talk about pockets being unnecessary. But that is the point of a bucket purse though. All right, so we've got our right sides together, as you can see, and I'm going to pin along the top so we can sew it closed and flip it out and see how this bad boy is looking. So I'm gonna clip I'm going to switch over to my industrial for the rest of the construction of this bag because we're pretty much done. So I'll clip it all and start sewing it together, and I'll see you in a sec. Alright guys, welcome back to the industrial machine. Hello Helmsworth, I'm a student. I've got my edge roller down so I know I am sewing at a 3/8 seam allowance. I've got the top of my bag all nice and clipped. You'll notice I did take the flatbed off for this part. It's not necessary to have a cylinder arm machine to put this together. It's certainly easier, but the opening is big enough to where you can smush it very easily with a flatbed, domestic or industrial. Like I had mentioned, I made my previous ones on the 2012 just so I could test it out. So it is definitely doable and achievable. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew around the top here, and then I will flip it out and see what we got. I'm really excited. All right, so our lining is attached to our exterior. I am going to trim down the seam allowance a little bit everywhere except for the sides that have our flaps. You want to leave that seam allowance a little bit longer because as you top stitch, you can top stitch through that seam allowance facing down. It gives a little bit of extra support since those flaps are going to be constantly opening and closing. So remember to leave those a little bit long, then maybe cut along the edges of them so you get a little less bulk. There we go. Yeah, just a little less bulk in those areas. All right, so now it's time to turn this bad boy out. And because we left a nice big opening in the lining, it shouldn't be too hard. Now, if you're worried about the wrinkles in your bag, you can easily take a hairdryer to it, and that'll help soften the wrinkles from turning it out. Or if you live in the desert like I do, hello Arizona friends, I like to just take any bag that I've had to turn and make, and I'll just take it outside and let it sit in the sun for not even that long. I mean, because it's Arizona. So I just leave it out there for a little bit, have a little suntan, and I check on it, and the sun just kind of bakes the wrinkles out. So just kind of a happy tip for you. So now we see our bag, our Tardis, really coming together. And for some people who don't want a very structured bag, you could really stop now if you want. It's up to you. I want a structured bag, and we're so close to being there and having one. So I'm going to take you over to the cut table. And back when we were talking about interfacing, I mentioned how there was going to be something different to kind of put in the bag to really help it get that structured shape. And I'm going to take you over there, and we're going to go ahead and do that step now. And I think we'll do that before top stitching. That way it gives, yeah, it'll give a little extra grab and grip. So I'll see you in just a sec. Hi again, guys. So welcome back to this table. You can see our Tardis is looking cool. A little floppy though, right? So I'm going to add comic book boards to my Tardis. I actually used to work at a comic book shop. I worked there for the past like 7 years, and I only left recently so I could sew full time. But comic book boards are great for many different things in the sewing fabric world. A lot of people I know, there's a lot of people that use it for sewing their fabric and storing their fabric. So it's definitely a more versatile tool than what most people think. I am using comic book board because I like it. It has a slight bend to it, like you can move it, but it's not easy to bend. It's thicker than most like cardstock that a lot of places that will use, you know, for scrapbooking, but it's not as thick as cardboard. And it's also readily available. You can get it on Amazon. You can go to any of your local comic book stores. And I guarantee if you go in there saying you need comic book boards for fabric and sewing, they won't even look at you weird. My shop was actually down the road from a sewing store, and we used to have little old ladies come in all the time looking for comic book boards so they can fold up fabric around it. So I'm telling you, comic book boards are very versatile. But it is going to be very hard for me to demonstrate how I'm putting and placing it in, because I'm going to be going through that opening in the lining and basically gluing them to each of the 4 sides. You can play around, you can do 2 sides, maybe the sides with the strap connectors on. I like doing all 4 sides because, you know, I don't have to turn it again, so I might as well support all 4 sides. I have these cut down to approximately 5 by 8, so just like how we cut the Decovil. I did cut it a little bit skinnier on the side, so it's more like 4 by 3 3/4. Yeah, 4 3/4. Largely because we kept the seam allowances long, so I can kind of bend and finagle the board in between the seam allowance, and then the seam allowance will overlap the edges and kind of hold it in place. That's going to be really hard to demonstrate, so I'm sorry. But it's very easy to do. I'm going to be using double-sided tape, which I should have had over here and already prepared, along the top, side, and bottom. That's the only places I'm going to use double-sided tape, and it's probably even a little bit overkill to use them on all 4 sides. I'm using double-sided tape basically as like the brace to hold the board in place as the glue dries. I'm just using basic fabri-tac glue. It is a permanent glue, fabric glue. I will put it directly on the fabric, work the comic book board in underneath the seam allowances, and then press it down. The tape will help keep the board to the glue as it dries and becomes permanent. So let's go ahead. I'll do one on camera so you can kind of see how I work those edges. And like I said, you actually don't need a whole lot of double-sided tape. It's really just to kind of hold the board in place as the glue dries. You can use a different type of glue. You can use E6000. That's probably overkill. I think fabri-tac is perfectly fine. I wouldn't use hot glue because that's not a permanent glue. And hot glue gets kind of brittle as it dries, and it can come off, and hot glue does not adhere to flat, smooth surfaces well. It needs to be a little bit roughened up so the glue has something to grab onto. So I've got the tape prepped on one board, the fabri-tac, find the whole opening in the lining, and I'll just go ahead and, it doesn't really matter which side I start with because I'm gonna be doing all 4 sides, but I can kind of feel the glue squirt, 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 squirt. And you can't see, but I can see that there is plenty of glue, probably too much glue. Oh yeah, too much getting inside. And then I will work the comic book board in through the opening. And then I like to wedge one side in under the seam allowance first, and then scoop through and do the other seam allowance after. Perfect. Nice, like a glove. Smush that down nice and good. Got a little glue in my hands, that's all right. Now you can already see this one side that has the board is nice and straight. Nice and straight. So I'm gonna go do the other 4 sides so you can see what that looks like, because I think you're gonna really like what it looks like. So I'll be back in a sec. All right, so I have attached all 4 comic book boards to the bag. And as you can see, it makes a huge difference. It is much structured, very much like a Tardis phone booth. And now I am ready to close up our opening hole and then top stitch around the opening and then add the last part of our turn lock. Now for top stitching, I like to do like a normal top stitch right along the top. And then I like to go again and top stitch around underneath the police public phone box call line. That will take me through the comic book board to add extra support for holding it in place. Now, my machine as an industrial can go through comic book board like that. A domestic, most of them like that. But you are absolutely going to have to change your sewing needle afterwards. If you decide to sew through your boards, change your needle afterwards, okay? You do not want to sew through fabric after sewing on a needle that had gone through cardboard or comic book board or whatever you decide to add to this. I mentioned the comic book board because they're lightweight and it really, as you can see, gives it that Tardis structure. But at this point, you could really just kind of glue-based any sort of interfacing in here. You could just use foam. You can use Decovil heavy. You could use cardboard like I mentioned. You could use multiple comic book boards if you want to give it even extra support. Get creative with it and just have fun. I'm going to sew the opening that we left open. Boop, closed. You can do this by a slip stitch, or the fabric is, I would say it's camouflaged enough to where if you just want to pinch and sew it closed, you could easily get away with that too. So I'll sew this closed. I'm going to tuck this bad boy in, and then I'll see you when it's time to top stitch. All right, so I sewed my opening turning hole closed. Our lining interior is complete. All we have left to do is top stitch around the top. And I think I mentioned earlier, but I am going to do it twice. I'm going to do one just above the police box line and then one below. I think it'll look cool. And it'll also grab that comic book board, just give a little extra support, really kind of adhere everything together. I'm going to just start on the side so I don't have to worry about the flaps. When I get to the flaps, I'm going to make sure that the seam allowance is pushed down as much as I can. We left it long on purpose so we can sew through it to give extra support. But yeah, let's go ahead and top stitch and finish this bad boy up. I'm so excited to see what it looks like. Excellent. Very cool, you guys. Yeah, I definitely like the 2-layer top stitch. You know, you guys will have to let me know if you try the 2-layer top stitch and if you like it. I think it looks really cool. I think it kind of makes sure that your lining is even, you know, extra flat as it drops in, you know. Really nice and flat there. It's nice. It's decorative. Ooh-wee. You can see a little bit of bubbling on the fabric. That's to be expected since we were turning it around. I'll probably hit it with a hairdryer in a sec, but it's pretty much done. All the sewing is done. All we have to do is add the last part of our turn log. So I happen to know that my opening is 1.5 inches. It's just a basic screws. I still have that tiny black dot that is probably very hard for you to see, but that is my center. And that is what I'm going to use as my guide for where I put the female part of the turn lock opening. And if our math was right, it will line up perfectly. But we can very easily just kind of prop this close and just kind of feel our way. Yeah, that's going to line up with the dot. It'll boop. It is kind of nice. If you want, the Tardis does have kind of a 3D top. You can give a little bit of extra room to kind of poof it. That'll kind of mimic it. If you do that, you might want to consider adding in a support strap right here. You can add, you know, little swivel clasp that clip here, and just have 2 little straps clip to have like a little base for your flap to rest on. That's kind of up to you. I didn't do that. Largely because when I was designing the pattern for this bag, I took out my wallet and my sunglass holders and I measured them, and I really just kind of wanted a purse where you could, you know, put your wallet, your keys, and that was it. So I know that when my wallet and my sunglasses and keys are in here, it is the perfect height to have something push against to have easy access to that turn lock. So I'm not really worried about it. But that's also something I designed with my wallet in mind specifically. So if you make to sell, you might want to consider putting a support strap in. It's very easy to do. Just a little, you could even use, you could probably just use like 3/4 seatbelt webbing even if you really wanted. Just have 2 swivel clasps to connect. I don't know. Just an idea. I'm gonna go ahead and take this over to my table so I can cut that 1.5" opening to install the last half of my turn lock, and I'll see you guys in a couple minutes so we can see our finished bag. All right, guys, we went ahead and added the last part of our turn lock. Ooh. Looks like I got a couple threads I gotta clean up still, but I'll go ahead and do that in a second because I want the instant gratification of finishing this bag and seeing if the lock lines up. So whoop, whoop, turn, and huzzah, guys, look at that. Yay, math. We have a Tardis bag. I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. It's really a very simple bag to make. It's really going to be the hardware and the interfacing that you decide to go with that really kind of makes or breaks the bag. You could do a nice slouchy Tardis bag. You could do a nice structured Tardis bag like I've done. Either way, it's just fun to have a Tardis bag. Turning lock, which mimics the light perfectly. The artwork inside with all the different doctors is fantastic. If you want to add a slip pocket, easy to do. I am lazy. And really, it's an awesome just bucket purse to just grab and go. That about does it. There's the front. If you have any questions, leave them down below in the comment section and I will clarify as needed. If you need a link to comic book boards, I can put one as well in the description. There are different size comic book boards, but any size is going to be fine. Modern, bronze, current, golden age, silver age, whatever brand you see. All of the sizes will work for this bag, so you don't have to worry about it. Until next time, I'll go ahead and sign off. If you haven't seen, I haven't been doing too many long, in-depth tutorials, but I've been doing a ton of shorts of bag making processes and just fun bags that I've made. So make sure you go to the channel and check them out. Yeah, I'll go ahead and sign off for now. Allons-y.